All right, here we go, y'all. Dat NBA Life, episode 3. I guess trade line edition, trade deadline edition, whatever it may be. Obviously, the big news, Cleveland basically shifted the whole roster. King LeBron got his way. And, you know, I don't know, man. I don't know. We'll see how, you know, I did a little trade video on, you know, like the schematics of it. And I was kind of more interested in LeBron and like the dynamic of Dan Gilbert, LeBron's passive aggressiveness, and just how it was funny. Isaiah Thomas, mind you, had I think his best offensive output of the season in his first game for LA, and he said something like, "I got my superpowers back." And then LeBron in his first game, without mind you, the new teammates aren't there. 19 assists. That's a statement right there. So clearly everybody's happy right now. There's going to be a honeymoon phase, but what was, James, your reaction to initially this trade and maybe just LeBron?
Yeah, man, with that whole passive-aggressive tip, I definitely was kind of noticing something similar to what you had seen, how he was dishing it off, letting everybody eat. It's just kind of interesting. Later on, we'll talk about how if you look at it through a family systems lens or the fourth step of 12-step facilitation, I think LeBron is trying to maybe alleviate some resentment. But as for the trade on NBA terms, I think it was a good move. You know, I try and stay partial, but I believe they went from average age of 33, 34 to an average age of 25.6. I'm a big firm believer that young legs tend to perform better. I think Gilbert has realized that he needs to take back some reins from LeBron, and I think that he is understanding that he just needs, in general, some younger players that are a bit more solid, because those cats that they got are definitely decent. I'm a big Nance fan.
Nance Jr., the posterizer, man. He's got some Warriors several times. And here's the thing with these guys too also is I think that they're never, none of them are used to being a star or being the man. And I think that goes a long way with chemistry. You saw Isaiah Thomas, you saw Derrick Rose. Obviously Kyrie wanted out. Kyrie's got to be chuckling in Boston. What'd he say? No comment. But you know, he's watching. He essentially was driving by in his Range Rover, and he saw his ex at a bus stop, like sobbing. You know.
Yeah, man. Yes, and you don't ever feel bad about that. You feel kind of vindicated, as if I had told y'all this is what it was going to be, and everybody likes that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And you know, I was listening to everybody's take on it, and it's remained to be seen. But I think that there is a notion that there's an argument saying, okay, well, maybe LeBron will stay now. They still have the Brooklyn pick. You've got young guys on good contracts. And why would LeBron want to come west? You've got the Warriors, you've got the Rockets, and the West moving forward is too much of a dogfight to go out west if he wants to win championships. And I kind of looking ahead and projecting ahead, I don't really agree with that. You've got Giannis Antetokounmpo in a young Bucks team. Obviously, Brad Stevens probably the best coach in the league with a core all under 24. Toronto has finally shifted into today's current NBA as far as systems goes, and two guys in their prime. And then you got Philadelphia with Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid. So I know that the West has been strong for like the last forever. But moving forward, if you project the next 3 or 4 years of LeBron's career, the East, man, and then you got Detroit too, man. So I don't know if necessarily the West is going, it's top heavy, but I mean, you're going to have to face those guys ultimately anyway if you want a ring. It's about rings. So I don't know.
So you're kind of saying that you're seeing a shift, that we're kind of praising the West and they've been so far ahead for so long that maybe now it's going to balance out. I've noticed something like that too. You know, I'm from Texas, so I was always a big proponent of Texas football. But we had to start realizing that the Californias and the Floridas and the SEC, those areas actually had kind of taken the reins in some ways, because the Big 12 now, I know it's different than NBA, but the Big 12 now is kind of not as impactful as it once was. So you're right, some of those conferences can shift, and you're talking about how schematically people have studied the Warriors and basically built themselves in a similar fashion. And at a certain point, if you can get some players like you're talking about who don't have to be the man or willing to play a role, and you're using a good schematic of the winners, the Warriors, you know what I'm saying, that kind of distance from the Warriors and everyone else could somewhat limit.
Mm-hmm. No, that's well said, man. And we'll stick on that football of comparisons. But also it's always been a star-driven league, and people are right to point to the West. Has, at least in my lifetime, the West has always been strong. I guess there was Jordan, but even Jordan kind of had the benefit of being in the East. But I just think the stars, the young stars, 25 and under, are all East. But whether they stay East or how that goes. But getting back to the Warriors, and this has been a ongoing subject on my channel and throughout the season with Warrior fans and just the NBA, is the light years ahead comment from Joe Lacob, and now the Warriors are no longer light years ahead. And what I was kind of like picking my brain, like, so what would be the next step in the evolution of this sport? Right now, it's the 3-ball, right? And it's also the switch defender, the Draymond Green, if you will. Every team is hunting for a guy that can play the 3, 4, and 5. And then ideally they want to be able to spread the floor. They have to be able to shoot. And I was racking my brain. What is the next step to have a guy that can do that, but then can score in the post? Like, you have to kind of everything comes full circle eventually. And so is it going to be a post guy? And then my other thought was that just like the NFL, I think the Seattle Seahawks were the perfect example of this. When in the NFL now, you basically two-thirds of your roster, I don't know if that might be disproportionate, but a good amount of your roster has to be on their rookie contracts, because you only have you pay a high price, you can pay a pass rusher, obviously your quarterback and your left tackle. And then you probably pay a skill position guy, a receiver or a tight end, right? And then the rest of these guys, and then maybe a middle linebacker or a DB. And then the rest of these guys essentially have to be on small deals. And that's what Seattle caught lightning in a bottle with that. And now I think that shifting to the NBA, because they spent too much money 2 seasons ago. And so now teams are going to look for versatile defenders on rookie deals. Look what the Warriors are doing with Jordan Bell, Patrick McCaw. And they didn't exactly strike gold with what's going on with McCaw or Damian Jones or even Looney. But Jordan Bell, that's the blueprint. Get a guy that can contribute and defend on a rookie scale, so we can keep our stars together.
Yes, you're kind of saying younger, less expensive, and more versatile, as opposed to bigger, stronger, faster. Because people tend to think of these dynasties and the big 4, big 3, however you want to slice it up. But you're thinking more of, there's some different strategies when you look at Eastern philosophy and Western philosophy within business. So even if you take it outside of on the court, these front office people and these businessmen are seeing that people tend to like to go to the Gap. They tend to take their kids to Marshalls. They go to stores such as these because it's versatile. It has a little bit of this, a little bit of that. You'd probably love to take your kids to the Prada and Gucci store, but that's not necessarily functional. So even if you think about your own closet, what type of clothes are you rocking more frequently? For most of us, it's work clothes. And unless you're an attorney or a salesman, sometimes you're looking for that value and that versatility. So I think some people, when they're stockpiling their closet of players, they're starting to realize, the flashy gear is fresh, but I only wear it on the weekends, but I play all week. So they're kind of looking for that more versatile, something they're going to get the most wear and tear out of it in some ways. At least that's what I'm gathering from what you're saying.
No, I like that. I like that value, perceived value of, like, I think I used Julius Randle as an example of why the Lakers, because I really like him as a player, aggressive, and his physical attributes and just his mentality on the court. And you're like, well, man, why do the Lakers want to get rid of him? Because right now I believe he's probably making something like $5 to $6 million a season. But at $22 million, if he gets a deal that he expects to get, all of a sudden that value is gone. Then he's not really worth it. And to touch a little more on schematically what these guys need to do is what I think you need to find is something that's going on right now, and we saw it in this Warrior-Dallas game the other night, was teams know now the whole philosophy now is to switch every screen and roll on defense, right? Everybody can guard everybody because we have versatility. Well, Rick Carlisle and some of these OG coaches are playing against that, and they're just setting these fake screens in order to get the switches that they want. They pick on Steph Curry every game. They're like, all right, let's switch. And all of a sudden, Dirk Nowitzki's 52 years old, but Steph still can't guard him in the post. And so,
true.
And so they're getting these switches. And so I think the evolution is to find, in particular, point guards who fight through screens well. On value guys that have to be able to shoot the three somewhat, at least spread the floor, and then we'll fight through the screens, because that's the problem that's going on in the NBA right now. Is these bigs, you're seeing traditional big men are dying because of the offense, right? Everybody's on the perimeter, so a big guy can't come out and guard that anymore. But if you have a guard that can kind of make up for that and can fight over screens and recover, and they don't need to switch, then you can perhaps bring a traditional big into the game and use his post offense.
That makes sense. Do you feel that with what Cleveland did, that they kind of went to that model with some of their guards? Do you feel those guys can make it through?
I definitely. George Hill is going to be a huge upgrade. I know the numbers guys are saying that he's fallen off a cliff defensively, and I spoke on that. I said that, you know how it is when in a situation where he was in Sacramento, where it's just he basically, and at his age, and a guy that's been in the playoffs perennially. Yeah, I think I nailed that word. That wasn't bad. But when he's been in the playoffs so much, for him to be in Sacramento, I think he just kind of shut down. I don't think we were getting a full effort from him. And then Larry Nance is going to be a very nice guy. He fits that mold. Larry Nance and Jordan Clarkson fit that mold of exactly what we're talking about, and that's what Cleveland's done. They're guys they're not going to command a ton of money, and they're going to give you value. And remember, I think it was last podcast we were talking about LeBron, how he doesn't necessarily you don't necessarily put stars around LeBron.
Yes, you need a bunch of people that are willing to fulfill their role. And I found it very telling whenever they were interviewing him and asking him, so, you guys made some big changes. How do you feel about that? And his response seemed very one-sided, but we'll discuss that in a second. His statement specifically was, can't wait to get these guys in and show them what we're all about and what we're trying to do. And within that concept of we, it sounded more like I to me, but I guess I can accept that because he is excellent at what he does. But it just seems somewhat with that passive-aggressive type concept you were speaking about, his idea of we, in some ways, really is more I. But so that was just kind of telling to me in some ways.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny, too, because the whole dynamic of it, and I think Isaiah, no doubt, can you imagine? And I'll see, I kind of jump off subject a little bit, but I have some of this is going on with Golden State, and it's not as exaggerated. But LeBron is like, people argue what he could be the greatest basketball player, definitely of this era, right? And so the ball gets heavy in other people's hands. Like there's an added pressure playing alongside LeBron that you don't feel alongside other players. And different guys respond differently. Dwayne Wade obviously got sent back to Miami. And I think Wade, I want to credit him because I'm not the biggest Dwayne Wade fan, and it's because of his dramatics when he hits the floor. He draws cheap fouls, and he has some bitch assness to him. But he in Miami the first go around, and he kind of yielded to LeBron and let LeBron be LeBron.
Yeah, you were kind of saying in some ways he seems like a very accommodating individual, that he's willing to change aspects of himself for others on the court and off of the court.
Right, yeah. I was so he types like he'd have a hyphenated last name, Dwayne Wade Union, right? He just seems like that type of dude, but it's a credit to him because he was a superstar player. You don't see guys. That's why it worked. And we haven't seen it work with another caliber player of Wade, because Wade was a superstar in Miami.
Yes, he was.
Right? Kyrie is a superstar, but no one else. Isaiah Thomas is not a superstar. Kevin Love's not a superstar. And, you can go down the list. He's had some fringe stars, Carlos Boozer and, the Mo Williams, stuff like that. But to really mesh it with, because you talk about him coming to, let's say there's a rumor that he would go to Houston. Those are superstars there. And that's just, I don't know. They've made it work between James and Chris, but adding LeBron, that dynamic, it's a gift and a curse, right? Because he's such a strong personality and player, you have to assemble very carefully around him.
And even still with that Houston idea, if you think about the Thunder a little bit back, once they did have that big three, Harden was the one that they kind of shipped off. So when you think of resentment and things like that, he basically wants to be the man still to this day. He's not really trying to, and from my perspective, I don't know the man. I don't know everything about him, but I think he's settled there and he does want to win, but I don't think he's really interested in getting someone that could usurp the throne or take a lot of shine away from him. So you're right. I'm not sure how James going there meets that within his mentality, because whenever he felt like he was the third wheel for the Thunder a while back, it wasn't his choice, but he left, and he's not going back or nothing. So I don't see him having that mentality of wanting to play second fiddle.
Right, and that's where I don't see it happening. But Harden and Paul and to just even, I know that right now they seem like world beaters, but it'll be very interesting to see them. We haven't seen them deal with adversity yet, and because you kind of know, at least with Golden State, and obviously through my biased goggles, but you kind of know how that plays out. Draymond is going to be the vocal barker, and Steph and Katie, just the personality fit of the four in Golden State, we know what that is. We know what's going to happen when they struggle and kind of how they're going to react. If they blow a game, I say Chris Paul and Harden, if there's a miscommunication late in a playoff game, I'm not sure how they're going to react. And then, I don't know. It's touch and go. But yeah, I don't see LeBron being able to mesh with. And here's the thing that I've thought about. This could be an ugly end to LeBron's career. Because is he ever really going to be like, all right, and yield to a young star?
It's unlikely. And I'm thinking, too, even forecasting ahead, the decision part 2, eventually he probably won't go about it in the same fashion that he did previously, but we can all be awaiting the decision that he's going to have to make of what he's going to do with Cleveland and how he's going to present it, and Dan Gilbert and the letter he sent him.
He's going to have a piñata in downtown Cleveland, and he's going to hit it open, and it's going to be the little Laker balls come out, and he's going to. He couldn't have handled that any worse, man. But I'm just saying, like I've heard some people throw out the 76ers, like, oh, he would, if you really want to go somewhere to prolong your career, then you've got Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid, and you can kind of chill and let them do the heavy lifting. But is it at this point, and LeBron has been the man since he was like 12. So,
yes.
It's not something that we've seen stars struggle with that before, but him being the largest of stars, I don't see him being able to do that. And so it could be ugly. You could see him at 37 in this same scenario, and it just looks a lot worse.
Yes, man, that brings me into an idea of character defects and moral inventory and step 4 of 12-step. At that time, whenever you're leaving any situation, you have to come to a summation of what your resentments are. And when you're talking about LeBron and potential character defects, things that may hold him back, that won't let him get to the next level, he does present some of those things. That passive-aggressive behavior you were alluding to previously, that may end up being his Achilles heel, because he's not out there real brash, yelling, getting in people's faces and things like that, but you can still see that salty attitude, and he definitely is an egotist, and I can't blame him for being that. But what I'm trying to say is, when you look at it through the lens of 12-step and unhandling resentments, LeBron really is going to have to check that concept of hubris. Even though he's grown up, once people have kissed your butt from age 12, it's really, really challenging to yield to someone else who's on the upswing. So it could be ugly, an ugly ending, because he's probably not going to want to do that. It's hard to do. How are you going to see somebody else shining, coming up, and all that's playing in your head is all your highlights and what you had done? It's just a natural human thing of, it's difficult to take a step aside for somebody else.
Mm-hmm. It may take like a great humbling. I wouldn't because he is shown that he's so smart. It would take something. I don't know what it would take. Like a first round elimination, or something embarrassing as in the next 2 or 3 years, and how he would go about. Let's say that he did it, and he's amazing, because he's if you want to argue, he is the player that's lived up to the hype, the most hype ever, and he's lived up to it. So I want to give him credit for that. But what would happen is essentially LeBron James needs to become a center. If the way the league is trending, now I'm not saying like today, but I believe, what is he, 34? By the time he's over 35, 36, 37, this next contract at some point, if he wants to, this is in my eyes, if he wants to do the right thing or continue to win and have this end nicely, become a center, develop some post game, right? And then let the three-point shooting. And because at center, then he doesn't have to be on the perimeter defending as much, but he will still have even a 35-year-old LeBron is still going to be able to move laterally better than most centers. He has the physical strength. And then he's going to have, and then, you know what I mean? He can go inside and develop like a jump hook and a drop step. And they can still get touches from him in there or get open looks from that. He can still generate open looks for others. But I don't know if that's – I know he's gone and seen Hakeem like many of these guys have, but I haven't seen any of it on the floor.
Okay.
Let's see here. All right, well, I don't know. What else is going on around the NBA? I'm getting ready to check the Cleveland-Boston game is going on as we record this as we speak with their newest acquisitions. The buyout market, I guess, to talk a little bit about that with the Warriors. And I hopped on live on YouTube last night. And so Joe Johnson has gone to the Houston Rockets, as well as Brandon Wright, a former Warrior. Marco Bellinelli is going to the Sixers. And I think that what's happening with Golden State in this buyout market is, or at least veteran players in the league, I think it's looked at as being a punk if you would join the Warriors. Like everybody saw the flat KD guy, and that's kind of a different thing, right? But if you get bought out and you join the Warriors, it's like, I don't count. That's an asterisk. You ain't getting no credit.
It's like the evil empire. It's very similar to the Yankees or some of those top powers whenever they're there. That's why everybody hates the Yankees. Like, you were decent, but you were on the Yankees. Whatever. They bought you. You sold your soul for rings or whatever they want to say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so I think that they may have a hard time. I mean, someone, if the price is right or the opportunity's there, someone will. I think that if it fits, it will. But I think that that's what happens. Like if you take Joe Johnson in particular, it's like, you can't do that. You can't just go get a cheap one. And then Houston can sell Joe Johnson on like, hey, man, let's go dethrone these guys. You can be the missing piece.
Oh, wait, speaking of Houston, isn't that where I could be wrong, but did Robert Horry play down there?
Mm-hmm.
And didn't he get a whole bunch of rings kind of by sneaking on squads and coming up big here and there?
Right. Very much so, right? So he started in Houston, and he was a rookie in Houston with like Clyde and Hakeem and that 93, 94 Rockets team. And then now chronologically, I have it skewed. I believe then he went to the Lakers, and he rode Shaq and Kobe.
Mm-hmm.
And then he went to San Antonio and rode Tim and Manu and Tony.
He's one of the most decorated people
Riders.
ever.
He's a rider. He's a rider, man. That's so, yeah, I don't know. But it depends. It's if you can feel good about it, I wouldn't listen to it. Like the Warriors, they went and got David West, and now he's really earned his keep with he's been amazing. Dude shot like 6 of 6 last night, and he's putting up massive numbers and really helping. But
isn't he much better than Zebo? I know it's kind of an aside, but he's just far superior.
I think that, and that's what people miss. Like kids and younger basketball fans. Like I think a lot of them came from the video game community as well.
Mm-hmm.
And so they haven't played that much, and it's a thing. And my kids right now, they're zoned out on their iPads. They're not outside. It's a perfect day, but they haven't played as much. And Zebo is in like by himself, he's better. Like one-on-one, he's more of a monster. He can get a bucket.
Mm-hmm.
He's just harder to deal with, right? He's a harder matchup. But in order for Zebo to be effective, he needs the ball a lot. And then he's not as good defensively. And so you look at the numbers one for one, you say, Zach's had a better career and, he's a better player. But David West is a guy that fits in more spots. You know what I mean? And he's a better value.
Mm-hmm.
He's a better value of a player, but they're similar. I'll tell you what, both of them you take into a dark alley, right? They're kind of the
yeah, definitely. They definitely have a lot of similar prototypical characteristics. They definitely probably knuckle up. You were talking about how you felt the Memphis bathroom was possibly a bit grislier than other places.
Right? This probably smells like sour barbecue ribs. The draws in there, someone getting the Charles Haley treatment in there. Look that up. That's too graphic. That's too graphic for the podcast, but it wouldn't go past that. And speaking of that, y'all, appreciate you guys listening to this as we really get our footing with this. Very excited, and we're going to add segments and things like that. But it's going to be on iTunes, it's going to be on Google Play, and different platforms for you guys to download audibly. Moving forward, we're waiting for approval on that. But yeah, man, let me talk about something real quick that needs to be addressed. It's off subject of sports, but it's something that no one's really comfortable talking about. But when it hits you, it can stifle you right in your tracks, man. So short butt cracks. And look at we're clouded right now. It's too much, but I'm serious. And shout out my boy Ernie, man. I'm gonna have to send my boy Ernie. I believe he's in Florida, but he was out here, and we used to work at UPS together in our 20s, and we would die about that. It was just an ongoing subject, and it's like, I'm serious. I was trying to think of, and this is hit or miss here, but to me, I was trying to think of like a comparison. It's like when you cut an avocado open, and the seed is too big, so there's just not enough meat. We losing it on this one. But hey, fuck it. But it's just a thing, right? Where it's like a woman's butt could be, it looks appealing in pants or whatever.
Yes.
And then it comes down and it's like a 3 or 4 inch crack, and it's really robbing you of cheek area and parameter, dude. It's a thing, man. It's a thing, and I thought y'all would appreciate. I think every man has been like, oh, it's a short crack, and it's shocking and it's stifling.
Yeah, I think we've all seen it. We've all been there. You could probably remember somebody or a situation where you would see that. Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about the different roles people play on their teams and how everybody fits into a different role, and kind of compare some of the Warriors to this model. So basically within family systems therapy, there's a scapegoat, a victim, a family hero, a lost child, a chief enabler, and a mascot. So I'll say that for y'all again. There's the scapegoat, the victims, the family hero, the lost child, the chief enabler, and the mascot. So I'm going to give you some different characteristics, and I'm going to challenge you to find an NBA player and a squad and see how all these different things meet together. So in order to understand it, you have to know some fundamental principles. So the first principle is triangulation. So it's kind of like that triangle offense from Phil Jackson. Anytime there's a conflict in a family, think about your own family, even go back to your grandparents or whatever. Anytime there's a conflict in a family, a team, an organization, there's going to be two people that whine and complain about one object or one person. So those people tend to be the victims, or they claim to be the victims, but in all truth, they actually stir up a lot of the problems by being so focused on how they've been wronged. They don't take time to then address others. I tend to think that the front offices and the ownership of teams would fall into that victim role. They forked over the money. They've had the foresight to do this, that, and the other. But anytime something doesn't go well, they're very rarely going to look at themselves, a.k.a. Jerry Jones. He is a player's coach, even though he's not a coach. He basically is there to enable and let the status quo continue. That's the problem with the victim. They let the status quo continue. So even if you think about Kerr, I like his style. He was an excellent player. But I think sometimes what you were saying, Aaron, it's time for him to step up and start coaching. If he takes that victim role and becomes torn in different directions, he's going to let the status quo move forward. But you got Warriors fans have been blessed because the status quo has been excellent. Y'all's basic behavior is A+. However, since the league is kind of catching up to that, if the status quo maintains and people start seeing themselves as victims from the leadership standpoint, the organization will erode. Then next you have the family hero. People like Steph meet this perfectly from my assessment. The family hero is a good kid, a high achiever. They're very responsible, and they tend to always do the right thing. But on the flip side, they have a lot of guilt, and they feel highly inadequate, which you might question, how does Steph feel inadequate? He's on top of the world. He's got deals. He's a good-looking cat, beautiful wife, beautiful family, not a thug, speaks well. But I might argue that he has received a lot of, you're only there because your pops was in the league. I'd be good too if I had the same breaks as you. And if you hear that your whole life, it can kind of make you feel that you're not making your own position and you're kind of drafting in someone else's success. It might be a reach, but the family hero would be someone like Steph. Then you've got the scapegoat. That would be like the Draymond or the probably Rodman type character, to where they're usually very smart, insanely athletic, highly skilled, very vocal, and their main thing is they feel rejected. If you were to get up under that and do a counseling session with someone who's been identified as a scapegoat, their behavior, all that bark and aggressiveness and cursing people out, it's really because they have been rejected in some form or fashion, to where the way they want to go about things, people don't think they should do it that way, a.k.a. Draymond. Once he was hitting those threes and able to shoot in the capacity that he wanted to and guard the rim and use all of his wonderful skills, he was feeling nice. But once people started getting into his head, oh, you shouldn't shoot so much, you should do this, you should do that, and then you couple that with he's gotten a bad name for himself from refs, he's the scapegoat. So just to review, leadership would be the victims. They think, oh, this isn't working out for me. Those would be the Robert Krafts, the Jerry Joneses of the world. Even some coaches consider themselves to be victims. You've got the family heroes of a squad, which would be the Steph Currys, pretty boy, golden boy, everything goes their way, but they feel somewhat inadequate. You've got your scapegoats, the people always point the finger at, but they tend to be the best people. Like if you look at Rodman before he got a little bit weird, it's amazing. Wonderful athlete. Same thing with Draymond. People argue that he may be one of the best defenders ever. I mean, when you really boil it down. So there's three other contingencies. So I'm trying to challenge y'all to take these family systems ideas, look at some squads, and see how they actually work. And when you piggyback it to the idea of that team meeting that the Cavs had, how their family had a bit of a quarrel and a disruption, the Isaiah Thomases, the Kevin Loves, this and that. This next demographic would be your Kyrie and Kevin Love. This is the lost child. This is the person that's kind of quiet, but is highly passive aggressive. They're not about to say nothing to your face. They're going to smile and let you think everything's cool. But all the while, they're going to be way too in la-la land. They're going to be kind of disconnected, not always there, not always invested. And that tends to be the lost child. The lost child tends to move away and never come back. You don't ever see them at Thanksgiving. You don't ever see them at Christmas. They might send a card occasionally, but they prefer fantasy and concepts over people. And Kyrie fits this mold wonderfully because he's all into his woke thing and all these different things, too cool for school. And the lost child tends to adopt that type of behavioral pattern. Lastly, you have the mascot. These are the people you love to hang out with. Excellent. Real fun time. Drink beers, chill, talk to girls, meet dudes, whatever your thing is. The mascot's the person you want to do this with. But the thing about the mascot is they're highly unreliable. They're some of the best salespeople on the face of the earth. They're fun to be around, but they are highly immature. So when you think about some people that fit this role, you know, I'm a big Clay fan. Love him. Excellent. But some of his extracurricular, I'm not saying that he's irresponsible or immature, but out of all those different prototypes, he'd probably be the mascot for the Warriors. Chill dude. I don't think he's married. If you're a married dude, you might really not want to kick it with Clay that much because that might really get you into some situations. But I just thought I would present that concept to y'all that if you look at family systems and the way that people do family counseling, and then you couple that with a team or a squad, every squad fits one of these roles and has some players that have these types of characteristics. And as you know, some families divorce, some families get stronger. Every family has its own story. So it just kind of interests me the way these things can play out at times.
I like that, man. That's fire. You come in with the fire on that, man. But in Clay, because initially I was kind of thinking he's the lost child, because he is, I mean, passive aggressive might not be the right word. He's just almost like robotic at times, and it would strike me as if there's a Warriors, I wouldn't go that far. I don't know. But I see what you're saying. But when you said the mascot, to me, that came to mind as like a Nick Young or a JaVale McGee.
All right then, yeah.
Where they're very fun to love, fun loving, like you said, great salesmen of themselves, but you don't know what you're gonna get up and down. But that I think that's I like that concept, man, and I think that Draymond, and it's funny because I've been on that tip a little bit lately, because a lot of Golden State fans, they don't like it when you question Steph. And I know that I'm hard on him, because it's just that he like his effort level isn't there like what I would like it to be. But people always Draymond this, Draymond that, and Draymond gets kind of gets scapegoated sometimes, because when the effort level's not there, he forces it.
Yeah, that's what you were saying. And I was hearing somebody say that the other day, that whenever Steph takes kind of a backseat or has an off game, you got to generate that intensity. And if you're already an intense dude and you take it up one more notch, you're already at 11. And if people are already looking at you, you know, you're just going to stick out like a sore thumb. So it's important that everyone has that balance. Because what I notice about Steph, and I know you talk about him real tough, but he should be able to take it, and he can, obviously. Mm-hmm. It's just sometimes you're right. His attitude and his level of effort, for whatever reason, some days it's almost like he knows he's great, and he has a sense of entitlement, and that's very big with the family hero, because they feel entitled. I've done all these things. I'm the best shooter of all time. I could do whatever I want. I could shoot from half court. I can dribble real nicely. I can finish with the left. I can finish with the right. I could clown you. I'm smarter than you. He just has a big chip on his shoulder, but he's not willing to let you see that. So he's kind of like a secret jerk, which is cool.
Ooh, I like that.
At least Draymond lets you know. Lets you know who he is. You know what I'm saying? Like the scapegoat, you can identify him, because I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, F you, whatever.
Right.
This is what I do.
Right.
But sometimes the more dangerous individuals are the passive aggressive ones, like you were talking about. Because Steph, you know, he has that fire within him. He's not a nice dude. He just seems to be like a nice dude. But you know, good and well, in his own mind space, he's like, I'm just gonna embarrass you. You have no right to be next to me on this earth.
Right. Some of the
if we both go to a restaurant, they're gonna serve me, and you're gonna eat out of the trash. You know, he just has horrible thoughts. You know, and maybe I'm imposing this on him.
Or what? I mean, but
yeah, no, I'm serious, man. I'm serious. Sometimes you have to look at the nicest person, and in their head, I've just seen it through my line of profession too many times, like some nice young mother who, you know, takes care of the kids and is always there, suddenly has just done something real foul. You're like, damn.
she's a ferocious back alley scallywag. No, I'm trying to keep it appropriate.
Yeah, man. I'm just saying, it's like, you did that. You're so kind and nice.
You nailed it though, and that's where, because I've and knowing, like, I always 5 or 6 years ago when I started coaching, whatever, and I know it's at the lowest levels of coaching, but I still put myself in that mindset. And so with Draymond, his mistakes, they're much more explainable. You're like, okay, well, he forced this. He was trying to do this. And because right, it's transparent what his actions, what he's trying to do. And again with Steph, some of it you're like, I don't even know, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah, that's interesting. I've seen that several times, especially in the finals a couple years back. The unnecessary behind the back pass when you could just get it to the person, or the no look pass when it's not necessarily the time for that. And I think it's a maturity thing. It's just once you've got so many skills, sometimes you just want to show them off, you know. And he's not flashy per se, but it's kind of funny. Although Steph shows a lot of flash, I still do not consider him to be flashy. He just has those types of skills, and that's how he plays. But those errant decisions, especially with the passing and the turnovers, sometimes I'm like, what Why? Like, why the behind the back no look pass when the dude is just right there? I don't know.
I have a theory on that because and it goes back to the chip on the shoulder or the rite of passage is I think because part of what fuels him is because he's like, physically he's really nothing and we've heard this from everybody is part of Steph's popularity is because he's every man as far as like on the court. He's not doing he shoots it at a ridiculous accurate rate from deep, right? But it's not something like anybody can do it physically. And so like even coming up in AAU through Davidson or whenever you look at his peers, Westbrook, Wall, even Harden to an extent, but all these guards, right? They're like they can dunk it. They have big, violent, athletic movements, and Steph's never had that. And to add a little spice to his game and flavor is where some of those flair, nonchalant, no look, glorious passes come from. I think.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to our idea of a potential form. And it sounds weird because he's excellent, but inadequacy. I don't know. We all struggle with that if we look in our own mirror and talk, to ourselves. But I don't know. If you're saying he's trying to add some extra flair and flash outside of that violent physical athleticism, but it's still funny though. He's not every man. Let's not get it twisted.
Yeah. No, you're right.
I don't care how much some people dribble and do this and that. You're right. He's not necessarily hella buff or physically imposing. Like I feel he could probably throw hands, but it's nothing you're scared of.
They've studied his nervous system. The training he does where they like overload his nervous system with like strobe lights. And they basically get his nervous system doing a bunch of things. He's bouncing a tennis ball. He's dribbling a basketball. He has strobe lights. He's looking at numbers. And they'll put other players into that training system, and they like have seizures. So like, his nervous system. And then if you look at like he bowls like at some crazy rate. He golfs at some crazy rate. So he's a very unique athlete. It's just we're not really sure how to measure it. But again, like if you were to make a mixtape of Steph Curry at 19 and a mixtape of Russell Westbrook at 19, right? It's just significantly different. There's the violent dunks, the blocks, the big crossovers, right? And so I think it's his way of kind of compensating with some of the flair in his passes and some of the nonchalant swagger of the way he pulls up. And a lot of it works, but I think that's the way to answer it. But one thing I wanted to ask your opinion on was the Warrior fans right now, so there's the buyout market. The Warriors are waiting to see if we're going to drop somebody and add a player that's bought out, like a veteran, a Tyson Chandler or something like that, a Brook Lopez. And we have a couple of young guys that have come up through our system. They're 2 or 3 years in the league, and we've really developed them. We drafted them. They've been in our summer leagues, our developmental. And I was trying to look it up. I couldn't find it online. But there's a thing that happens, right? When you purchase something, you automatically like it better. And,
yes.
Right. And so like there's this when a player is internally developed, like a Kevon Looney or a Patrick McCaw or Damian Jones, they value them more than they should. And
well, there's a lot of ways you can look at that. Even think of a buyer's remorse. Let's say, because no one wants to get into that position of having that remorse. So it's called cognitive dissonance whenever you have two opposing ideas that aren't matching up, which is somewhat different to dialectics. Dialectics is two opposing ideas that you accept. Cognitive dissonance is two opposing ideas that you don't accept. So it would be counterintuitive to believe I worked within this relationship, I worked at this job, and I'm getting fired. That doesn't match up with us because we tend to think good people get good outcomes, bad people get bad outcomes. We as humans don't do well with good people getting bad outcomes or bad people getting good outcomes due to the time contingency and our expectation. So in that situation you're explaining, there's both of those. You have some invested time with these individuals. You shared trade secrets with them. Sometimes you simply don't want them to leave because they're going to be an asset to somebody else. So there's that self-serving function of it too. And you also want to believe that what you do works, that I know how to spot talent. And that's why some people hold on to people too long, is because our process is the way we train guys or the way we bring people in. So there's a lot of different aspects to it. But when you're stating when you buy something, you like it more, it's because you don't want to go to those contingencies of I, as a good person, have received a bad outcome.
Mm-hmm.
You're more likely going to defer to, oh, it'll get better. Maybe we'll build around it, or whatever it may be.
Mm-hmm. And that's where you got to give credit to the Cavs GM, Kobe Altman, I believe is his name, right? He's
Mm-hmm.
come out and said it. They lost the Kyrie trade. They fucked that up. And he didn't like hold on to it and try to like, and we've seen this throughout the history of sports. Like you make a Herschel Walker type trade, right? And,
Yes.
and it's like they even to this, guys will take it to the grave, like, oh no.
Mm-hmm.
And Kobe Altman was willing, and maybe it's because he was so new, so he didn't have so much pride. You know what I mean? He was fresh in the job, and he was willing to be like, all right, let's get this little dude out of here. Send him. I was about to go off PC with that right there with what
PG, right?
what I was gonna call Isaiah Thomas, but I'll leave that alone. But so he was willing to do that, and I just think with the Warriors, I think they have a lot invested in Kevon Looney and Patrick McCaw, and neither of them. Looney's been decent, but Patrick McCaw is really underperforming, and I just wonder how long they're going to hold on to the belief of keeping them around. And maybe they'll get paid off for it. It's too early. It's not too late. But just moving forward, even past this season, are they like that invested where they're not at some point going to be able to be like, all right, let's move on from this?
Mm-hmm. That's a tough question, man. I don't know. I've seen people hold on longer than is necessary just to prove a point. So hopefully they pan out and contribute. But there's an old adage I've heard in marriage counseling: if you want to love your wife more, buy her a $10,000 ring. And it sounds kind of funny, but it shows that where you put your money, that's also where you have your love and your investment. So it's just kind of a funny thing that you can tell people, because it's true. Even let's say you don't like your relationship right now, whether you're a woman or a man, buy your significant other something real fresh. Just get them like a Denali or something real expensive. And you'll notice that at least for 2-3 weeks, you might pay a little bit more attention to them. Right. So where your money is, your investment is too.
Right, yeah, you're like, well, we ain't ending it now. Right. We ain't ending that shit now. And
or I'm gonna need that back at least.
Right, and that's where like, and I think it happens with. I see your point, because it happens in the end. Right, in the end, you get a huge contract to a guy, and it's like, all right, well, I love you, motherfucker. Like, I don't care. I don't care if you eat yourself out of the league. I just gave you $100 million, man. You the shit.
Exactly. And that brings us back to kind of Dan Gilbert and LeBron and Kraft and Belichick. It's very interesting that Dan Gilbert, after he wrote that I can't say racist, but there were some undertones in that letter that weren't that favorable or forgiving, and how he had to eat those words whenever he needed that asset back. So it just kind of shows you, anyone who's been through a divorce, a lot of times people argue over the craziest stuff. There was one dude, and he was supposed to get a pool table, but his wife was being passive aggressive, so she gave him the pool table with no balls, no sticks, no cues, no triangle, and then he goes to try and get his stuff back, and she has him served for harassment. So it's just kind of crazy. We tend to have to apologize for some of the things we do at some point in time. And it was interesting that Dan Gilbert had spouted off at the mouth, oh, LeBron, you're selfish, you're cowardly, you're immature, you're somewhat of a pawn in the bigger scheme of things. But certainly when that cheese was being distributed, he ate those words and was apologizing hella quick. Mm-hmm. So it's just kind of crazy. Same thing with Belichick opening up the knowledge vault. I'm pretty sure you guys heard about that there's some insider not necessarily insider trading, but somewhat similar, to where they weren't giving this assistant coach all the ins and outs of the Patriot way. But as soon as he got to a position to where he'd be moving up the ranks, suddenly the knowledge vault is going to open up, and we're going to school you to what it really is. And Alchemy, you were telling me that you used to work at a bar, and how scientific it can be in relationship to how you get money from people. So if you put peanuts out and their mouth is dry due to the salt, they're obviously going to buy more beers. If you have to have the seat a certain height, or even with Disney, they put trash cans every 27 feet because in the happiest place on earth, Disneyland, there is no trash. So they kind of reinforce your expectation scientifically by studying all these different things. How does that work? Because you used to be a bouncer at a bar, right?
Right. And to finish that, I think you said something about too, like at the 28th foot, more people are likely to drop their trash.
Yeah, very true. So they did a study, environmental psychology, and they found that at the 27.5 or 28 feet, a kid, an adult, a mom, a dad are more likely just to drop the trash in their hand. So they figured, all right, we're going to put it 1 foot in front of that, and lo and behold, it's clean. So they engineer everything, even from the colors of the doors, the way that you face something, the colors that they use, all that.
Right. Yeah, no, it'd be as simple as, and like, it's funny because like I'm a slight dude, I'm like $185, and I can clean up pretty well. And so they would put me at the back gate if I was bouncing at this bar, and it was kind of like the VIP access. You know what I'm saying? Of like, I'm dealing basically with females coming in and people that know the owners and the bartenders, and then they put
See, something lets me know that you kind of like that a little
bit.
It
was cool, right? And then the 350-pound dudes was at the door, and it could be that, right? But it's just like the temperature in the room. It comes through the science of even the music, what's played initially towards the end, the temperature. But yeah, I would like that bar rescue show. That's where I realized how much of a science it was of how we're manipulating sales and the mindset. And it plays into sports. What it kind of reminds me of is back to Belichick and unleashing the knowledge, dripping it out is in jiu-jitsu. So jiu-jitsu is a religion for Brazilians, right? So they take it on a whole nother level. And there was a thing, the first guy that trained me, he's a SWAT officer, and he's not Brazilian. And he said, once you get to your brown belt, they just kind of keep you there, right? Because they don't want you to be a black belt, because then you stop coming to class. Then you're at their level. So they're very sparing with the progression of your stripes and your belts. Because it's like creating a gap with sales. You always want a gap. And right? But if you start going to other training facilities and dojos, and it's a small community usually in each city, right, where these guys know each other, all of a sudden you may get a stripe a little quicker. Because it's like they don't want you to go to the other studio and start progressing. So it's like sometimes you have to force that. And it's like what Josh McDaniels did, right? He was flirting with going to the other instructor and having his own shit and getting the highest rank of black belt or head coach. And then Belichick's like, no. Here's your brown belt. Here's your brown belt. And pretty soon, right? And pretty soon you'll get your black belt. I don't do this for many.
Yeah. I mean, it's saving those insider concepts. People tend to forget how important it is, the knowledge aspect. Back to your idea of the Warriors being leap years ahead. Didn't he make that statement because they had everything, even their diets, the way that they get massages at a certain frequency, their meals, the way their flights go, like everything was calculated down to the T, to my understanding, right?
Yeah, they have pods that they fly to cities they're traveling to, and they're made custom for each player. So it's basically to make sure they don't go out and party and abuse their bodies. And so like Steph Curry's pod would be like, when he gets in the pod to go to sleep, it simulates brainwaves of him playing PGA golf on PS4, eating a home-cooked meal from Aisha. Whatever whatever that relaxes him, maybe some muffins after dinner. And you know what I'm saying? But whatever relaxes Steph and gives him optimum rest and sleep. So, and those are the type of things like Laker, he wasn't just talking out of his ass. They literally are putting more into it, but you have to stay. It's one thing to get ahead, it's another thing to stay ahead.
Yeah, man. Let me talk real quickly about a strange sport. Every week we want to kind of go into these just for the sake of, I didn't know a lot of these things existed, see what y'all think about them. Please do find some strange sports. I also want to encourage some people to come up with a strange sport and send some footage of you playing it. Maybe it'll catch on. Who knows? But there's this thing called foot wrestling where the objective, and it's in England, and it's just kind of funny. I don't know if you've ever watched English comedy. They just have a very dry, dark sense of humor, which is kind of funny once you understand it. but it's also very weird to me in some ways. But anyways, it was started back in 1972. And it's kind of like thumb wrestling, but you do it with your big toe and you interlock it with somebody else's toe. And the goal is to turn the foot either left or right. And I just kind of think about the hygiene of these sports and what's really going on. Like some people have toe fungus and a lot of hair to their foot and sweat and all this type of stuff. Yeah.
But what if like you're getting ready, let's say, okay, I'm top ranked in my region, and you get your foot up there and you look across and the dude has like this bunion that looks like it could just gash your foot open. Like, yes, are you like, whoa, this needs to be filed down? Like, what's the regulations, dude? Like,
right? And then when you think about it, listen to this real quick. In the world of toe wrestling, there are no stars who shine as bright as Alan Nasty Nash. The tough-toed Englishman took home his 14th title last weekend after winning yet another World Toe Wrestling Championship in Derbyshire, England. It was his 4th championship in a row. I bet you examined this fool's feet, and they're probably very similar to what you're talking about.
Right.
This man's name is Nasty Nash. I mean, come on. Y'all all saw, Nasty Nate from Half Baked. We knew what that was. Nobody was trying to get involved with that.
Yeah, man. He's like...
So, yeah, shout out to Mr. Nasty Nash and his gross feet and his 14 back-to-back championships. I mean, but that's respect, though, right? Like, this man is a winner, at least.
I guess. I piss my kids off so much when we watch, like, these America's Got Talents. And amazingness is terrible on I love Rob Dyrdek, but that amazingness is just, it's like a middle school talent show. But I'm like, because it's supposed to be these amazing feats, and someone comes out and does something, and they're like, that no one can do this. And I'm like, well, no one's even tried to do this shit. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to swallow a frog and shit it out, and it's going to be alive. And you're like, well, I mean, right. He's the greatest in the world at it, or is he the only one that's done it? So
definitely. But if you get a chance, please do look it up. I guess he broke his toe, and there's a picture of it. It's hecka bleeding. I guess somebody just hooked his toe, and his big toe is just inverted inwards. We'll put some footage up for y'all. Y'all got to see this. It's kind of dangerous. I mean, anyone who stubbed their toe, now that you think about it, gosh, I don't even know if I want the injuries you could possibly get. Stubbing your toe, losing a toenail. It's crazy. But last week.
Go ahead.
I was saying last week we had talked about the chess boxing. This one's a little bit more silly, but I guess
it's gruesome. And then to me, like, I wonder if you're predisposed genetically to like a foot fetish, because like for me, I like honestly, like I could if we didn't walk on them, I would cut mine off. Like I don't really care about my feet, and my wife can attest to it. It is a gruesome sight being an older basketball player. But it's like you notice like some people just really care about feet. Like I think it starts. I don't know when it starts. Like I said, is it genetics?
Yeah, maybe the Rex Ryans of the world, and even some of the cats on y'all's loved team, I've heard, kind of are into that.
Right. Oh yeah, Steph. That may be the Christian image there, huh? But yeah, I don't know. I don't understand how that ever, like, as like, are you like, you're going through puberty as a boy, you're 12, 13 years old, and you're like, but look at her feet. That shit, I don't know, man. I'm gonna leave that there. I don't know. That's a story for another pod, man. But I think, we found our way around this one, and this was pretty nice, man. And you got anything else?
No, man, that's about it. That's that I wanted to speak on.
All right, man. Well, episode 3 in the books. Again, check for it coming soon on iTunes, or if you're on Android, we'll have it on those platforms as well. I appreciate y'all taking the time to give it a listen.